jealousy, fear, and other weaknesses of the heart. Saphira nudged Eragon's side with her nose before dawn with more force than necessary. "Oh, Saphira." "Mind your manners," he exclaimed, massaging the sore spot. "I'm sorry, little one, but you need to see this." Quickly she infused his mind with her perspective, and soon he saw the outside of the mountain, several miles away. There was a lone rider on the back of a dark stallion. He didn't ride in a hurry, and it seemed relaxed under his cloak that covered the entirety of their figure. He seemed asleep or passed out. Is it a threat? I don't know. The Eldenari simply passed that image to me without a word, and I've been following it since then. Is this now? She confirmed. Eragon got out of bed and went to dress. Saphira, please contact Blurdgarm and Estrith. Ask them to meet me at the entrance. He paused, then turned back to her. If you like, call Hope and Bredor as well. Saphira approved of his decision and did what he told her. Even when the matter seemed so urgent, the elves had trouble keeping in time. Eragon was about a quarter of an hour waiting for the two of them when they showed up approaching the entrance. When they met, not a word about their tardiness was said. Eragon sure would not bring it up. Atra Estini Ono Thelduin, Ebrithil, Estrith greeted him, so did her companion. Eragon shook his head, appalled by their lack of care about the time, and finished the greeting. There's an individual riding our way. We do not know if it's a friend or foe. I want you to come with me and meet this person before he arrives here. Why are you worried, Master? Lots of people come our way, mostly refugees, and we don't go meet them every time, Estrith asked. Eragon sent a mental call to the horses living in Arya's garden a little earlier so they could help him with this task. He mounted one of them and waited for the others to do the same, because this time the Eldenari warned us about it. They did not say a word, simply showed the image to us. What it means I do not know. They understood his motives, so they mounted the horses and, communicating with them through their minds, the group left the mountain toward the lonely figure. Saphira and Bredor followed them from above where the clouds hid her perfectly in the night sky. Hope was as vigilant as the two of them on her dragon's back. It was almost dawn when they reached a low land where they expected to see the rider for the first time. And there he was, riding slowly, almost careless as if he was asleep, about a mile away. The group closed the distance until the person seemed to notice their presence and sit up straight on the saddle, pulling their hood back. Eragon, Blurdgarm, and Estrith stopped their horses to watch the other approach. Eragon glanced up at Saphira in an unnecessary attempt to check if she was there. Of course she was there. He could feel her. So were Bredor and Hope. Blurdgarm and Estrith gasped when they recognized the rider, but it took a little longer for Eragon to realize who was that person. Lord Deathada. The elven lord relaxed his shoulders when recognized and stopped his horse a few feet away from the group. He greeted Eragon first. Eragon did not like him. Arya was so sure about his loyalty that it had been an issue in their time together, but Eragon had a feeling that the elf was involved in the plot against his queen. He just did not know how or have a way to prove it. After he formally greeted Lord Deathada, he jumped to the ground followed by his friends. The elf did the same, and then he did something curious. He offered his hand to Eragon. It took a while for him to understand that Deathada wanted to greet him in the human manner. Eragon grabbed the man's forearm and nodded to him. A posh smile emerged on Deathada's lips, but it was washed away just as fast as it appeared. What brings you here, Lord Deathada? In his face a deep frown appeared, turning his expression completely, and the man seemed in pain. A horrible affair, as you might know by now. Betrayal made me run from home and seek refuge here in the east. I hope there is a place for me here, Shadeslayer, in the company of friends. Essie had never been busier. With the Lord of Sunon requesting her assistance to prepare his wedding feast, the poor tavern keeper barely had time to breathe. Because of the threat that delayed the festivities, Lord Dane and Lady Esmira were still to be wed. but didn't want to celebrate their union in the middle of a conflict with a big feast. They chose, then, to be married in an intimate celebration in Essie's tavern. She appreciated the remembrance, but wondered why not in the castle. When she voiced her question to Sir Urien, his deep, deep voice barked the obvious answer. They want peace, woman, can you not see? Not to be disturbed by the nobility who does not care about them, that's what they want. It seemed a fair explanation to her. Anyway, she would not discuss it. The celebration would be held behind closed doors. Inside, only family and closest friends. Essie would have the chance to meet the people she had only heard about, such as Roran Stronghammer, and two of the most talked riders, Rainier and Avelina, the only riders she hadn't met yet. She felt exhausted, but it was a good distraction from the thought of her husband Karth fighting in the south. She heard that the kingdom had taken a beat in Bellatona, and a shiver ran through her body to think of the poor Karth, a fisherman that had never thought of hurting anyone, fighting an enemy that he didn't even understand why he had to hate. When the day arrived, the guests started to come, and Essie had everything ready to receive them. Lord Dane and Lady Ismira entered her tavern as wishful lovers and left as husband and wife. She felt happy for them. The word spread like fire, and before the morning light arrived, the entire Sunon knew about it. The young couple reminded her of Karth and how she loved being his life partner. They said their vows, as they would never see a war in their lifetime together. Oh, how wrong they were. The spoon stirred the tea in his cup. His attention, however, was elsewhere. If Lord Detheda's words were true, he had been wrong in accusing him of being a traitor. Shame would consume him to death. Good think the only one to see inside his head was Saphira, and Arya. And Fernan. The Eldenari, too. Oh, little one, you have a lot of people inside your head. Saphira teased him, and he felt shame already burning his cheeks. Eragon was alone with the Lord in the Eyrie as he dealt with the Lord's account of the facts since Saphira was out teaching a lesson, despite being watchful of her rider. According to the noble elf, it was the middle of the night when he was awakened by Blagden's shrill voice. It came from the gardens of the Tealdari Hall as he flew from window to window in an attempt of waking the residents. Detheda, as a guest in the palace, came to the outside trying to find the reason for such a commotion. It was when he saw a big group of elves, sword in hand, barging into the property, casting aside the guards. Among them, members of the council. They hid their faces in masks, but were very well recognizable. There was fighting, and blood was spilled. Seeing that the traitors sought to take the power, Detheda ran, since he symbolized power in the queen's absence. I was heading south to join my queen when I heard about our army switching sides. So, I decided to come here instead, and maybe wait for her. I figured she would come to you eventually. Am I wrong? Eragon got his eyes back on the man sitting in front of him. He sipped his tea, still appalled with his presence there. How much should I say? Saphira, I'm not sure. Get around it, divert his attention until he is the one revealing information. We shall see, he answered vaguely. Why not wait in Illyra, where she currently is? Detheda's eyes lit up with news of his queen. Eragon felt jealousy eating his insides, and for the first time he allowed himself to name a very old feeling. He was jealous. I did not think she would go to Illyra. I considered she would retreat here or the north. But the latter is too close to her enemies. Eragon nodded. He was a clever man. Tell me, sir. How did the traitors get inside the palace so easily? I had the impression when I first visited the place that it was protected by blood when Arya recited a verse saying it so. Detheda's eyes became lost in the distance, watching the grey sky. The first snow approached Mount Arnger, and the days became less colourful by the minute. Your impression was correct. Only trusted guests of the Queen may enter the property through a very powerful and ancient spell. I was one of them, just like you were, and continue to be, I suppose. The inflection on his words made Eragon wonder if he knew something about him and Arya. The council is only welcomed when the meetings are in session, which makes me think that the same blood that protects Tealdari Hall also made it vulnerable to intruders. I don't understand. Eragon's eyes were met with intensity. Arya does not have any family members except for one relative. The use of Arya's first name was as uncomfortable as the mention of family betrayal. They are friends, Eragon. I know. I still don't like him. Do you? If he could see her, he would say she had shrugged. I do not care about him. But I think you are jealous. You think. The elf put his teacup on the table between them and moved to the window. You know her, Shadeslayer. Arya's aunt. Help me here, Saphira. Who is he talking about? Saphira imprinted in his mind the image of the letter Eragon received upon their arrival in Elismera many years ago for their training with Oramis and Glida. It was sent by Beline of House Meolandra, who welcomed them in the city and presented Eragon with clothes sewn by Niduan of Islanzadi's house. Niduan, he whispered. Dethida turned slightly to him and nodded, then turned back to the window in contemplation, his shiny long hair almost sparkling under the faint winter light. I did not know they were aunt and niece. Arya never talked about her before. Arya was a princess, as you humans normally say. Niduan was not. Now Arya is the queen, and Niduan is still not a princess. Eragon rose from his chair and put the cup down. He walked slowly until he was by the elf's side. Are you saying that they have a feud, and that is why Arya never talks about Niduan, so Niduan plotted against Arya? Dethida furrowed his brow, but never looked at Eragon. I could not have put it better myself. How does he know she is responsible for the betrayal? How do you know Niduan is the traitor, sir? Hers is the only blood capable of unlocking the palace in Arya's absence. Besides, she gave me this as I left, he said, and raised his tunic, turning his back to Eragon. There were bandages wrapped around his torso. He unwrapped it slowly and revealed a wound, circular, the size of Eragon's fist. The flesh seemed burned on the edges but very alive in the middle. Is it magical? Eragon asked, already knowing the answer. Dethida nodded and pleaded, Can you heal it, my lord? I would do it myself, but I cannot see what I'm dealing with. Saphira scoffed. You could heal it with your eyes closed, so why can't he? Eragon shook his head. I'm no lord. Then he came closer and thought it to be simple enough for even a student to do it. Saphira was right. It was a stratagem. Do not worry, Lord Dethida. I will fix it for you. Elva did not bother to knock. She entered Arya's room and found her arranging her bags to leave. Are you planning on leaving me behind again? Elva asked. Arya breathed heavily. She shook her head. Pack all your winter clothes. If you don't have any, I will give you the coins for you to buy it. Mount Anga is said to have a very harsh winter. Elva walked to the bed where Arya had her bags while she put her belongings in them. She sat down and watched the other working. I know. I have experienced it myself a long time ago. I do accept the coins, though. Arya did not know if she was only joking or if she needed the coins, so she reached for her belt and grabbed some copper and silver to give her. We leave at dawn, Arya said low. How about your guards? I've sent them on an assignment. Besides, I won't need them where we're going. Arya. You promised Lord Dethida you wouldn't dismiss your guards again. Arya regretted telling Elva about that, but now that she knew, she was only one more person to bother her about her safety. I need them somewhere else. Elismera, you mean? The pair stared at each other, and Arya tried to make Elva understand that Arya was trying to divide herself, be in more than one place at once. Perhaps if she had eyes everywhere, she would be able to regain her power. Elva dropped her look first and changed the subject. You don't seem too eager for this trip. I am not. And why is that? Arya felt exhausted. Too many decisions, too many conflicts, too many predicaments. She sat by Elva's side and let her gaze wander toward the outside. It was the middle of the day, and the rain fell slowly. almost lazy, bringing its scent along, his scent. Just to make everything more difficult, I feel like I am abandoning my people. Elva raised her shoulders, and you are, seeing that Arya looked at her with a death stare, she added, "It doesn't mean you should not go. They are already at the mercy of your enemies, so there's nothing you can do now. The best is to go to safety, regroup with your supporters, and work on a plan to have your throne back. In fact, the throne is still yours as long as you live. You will be the rightful queen. Everyone knows it. That is why they want your head." Arya was not expecting to find comfort in Elva's words, but somehow she did. Elva did not say anything different from what Fernan or Eragon had tried to say before, but it sounded less emotional and more rational. And if she had to follow something, it would be reason. I just wish it does not take too long for me to do all that. Why? Are you afraid of being forgotten? Elva teased. I am afraid to get used to life in the East and care less about my duty. Elva widened her eyes to hear that. Arya realized she had been too honest, and a wave of embarrassment washed over her. She did not correct herself, though. It was the truth, even if the human language allowed her to take it all back and rephrase it. Elva must have picked her pain in being divided between those two sides of her, for she stood up and played with her new coins in front of Arya, ready to escape the discomfort. Elismera will still be at the same spot as always. So will Mount Arnger. Whenever you decide to come or go, they will be waiting for you. Again, Arya felt comforted by her words. Arya found herself between a rock and a hard place when staring at the decision of leaving. On one hand, she would be able to do all the things Elva pointed out besides being in Eragon's arms once again in so little time. On the other hand, by staying she would show her people and her enemies that she was ready to give a quick response, and she would never give up the fight. What tipped the scale, however, was the fear of creating a scar in her relationship with Eragon, one too deep to repair. Also, of course, the imminency of possible death. Thank you for the coins. I'll go buy a pretty coat for the winter now. Elva left still juggling the coins in her hand, while Arya got back to packing. Maybe she was looking at the situation from the wrong angle. Or maybe she did not want to give in and look at only the good things, just to forget about the hardships in her life. Maybe she was just tired of thinking. Essie was sweeping the tavern's floor after the wedding ceremony when she heard the door swinging open. Inside, there were only her and Sir Urien, who waited for his shift on the wall to start. "We're closed," she said loud to the newcomer. "Then you should have been closed," a woman's voice spoke back to her as the door slammed shut. She turned to see the one they called Angela, the herbalist, standing by the counter with her strange cat. "I mean, we're not serving any costumers tonight." Angela smiled, looking at Sir Urien sitting by the fire with a cup of wine in his hand. "That's a shame. I heard you two are quite the company to keep around here, and I was only looking for a good chat." Essie followed with her eyes as the cat jumped to a chair, then to the table, spun around 2 times before lying down, curled up in a ball. Well, if even the cat had made himself comfortable, why not offer the same courtesy to her new costumer? Of course. "Take a seat. I will take your order in a second." "Oh, I will have what he is having, please." Angela pulled a chair at the table near Urien where the cat had lied down and waited until Essie fetched the wine and served her a cup. Then, to make sure no one else would come in, Essie locked the door and went back to her broom. "How was the wedding?" Angela asked. "It was good." Like any wedding, Essie restarted sweeping in hopes her two guests would engage in a conversation and let her out of it. For her luck, Sir Urien was well interested in the woman. "How do you know about it?" "I know many things. So I heard." "I would like to know why." He turned his chair around and crossed his arms on the back of the chair. The cat rose from his relaxed position, hissing at Sir Urien. Essie agreed with the little creature. The knight was being incredibly rude to the poor woman. She wondered if there was some history between the two. "Calm down, Solimbum. It's all right." Angela said to the cat, Solimbum, as he sat on his hind legs without taking his eyes from the man. I do not owe you any explanations, Sir Urien. But since I came here to find you, I will forgive the intrusion. Looking for me. His raspy voice resounded in the empty room. Essie pondered if she should leave so they could talk in private, but decided to stay. That was her establishment, after all. If they wished to talk alone, they should be the ones to leave. I heard you were the person that first encountered the one we've been fighting against. The leader of the magicians. I don't think I am. You must be forgetting about our lord and his friends, killed in a hunting trip north of the wall. Oh, yes. But we don't even know if they met with her. I mean, it could be any of her followers, I suppose. Angela drank her wine and threw a glance toward Essie, who pretended not to see it. Then she lowered her voice, and it was difficult for Essie to hear their conversation. She went to sweep under their table just to be close. I need to know exactly what you saw. And everything you know about your lord's illness following his attack. And why would I tell it all to you? I already talked to Lord Murtogh and Ryder Rainier. Let's just say I am conducting a different type of approach on the matter. One less warlike and more stealth. And I have a feeling you will want to accompany me. Again, why would I do that? Angela's eyes were bright when she so quietly hissed the word, revenge. That night, Essie went to bed with her head on fire. It felt like she would never sleep again after hearing about magical attacks on the mind, a floating magician, and a population of werecats planning on defending a Lagezia. It seemed the world was far bigger than her little tavern, that was the livelihood of her old parents. She could not wait to meet Karth again and tell him all about it. She bet he would find it amazing. One day, she hoped they would travel around the world, looking for other amazing things. She could not wait.